Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Today I have my boy, the Warrior of Virtue. Go ahead and say everybody.
Hello everyone, it's me, Virtue. Thank you for Lightning Blade for letting me back on the channel. It's been a pleasure. It's always going to be good, something good. Something good's definitely going to be cooked up. We got a really good video and hope you guys enjoy.
For sure. Now, this is a sequel-ish to a video I did a while back. I know that was a question mark of a video because, like, why would I even do that? Because the answer of that video should have been obvious with the Rinnegan Sasuke versus the Akatsuki. But at the end of that video, I did say that I want to do this video where we talk about every version of Sasuke versus every Akatsuki duo. Now, when I say every version of Sasuke, obviously I am omitting Rinnegan Sasuke because I've already done that. And I'm obviously omitting part 1 Sasuke because I like Sasuke and I don't want him getting slaughtered here. So I don't want to even talk about part 1 Sasuke versus any of the Akatsuki duo. So we're going to talk about the main Sasukes outside of the Rinnegan. So what we're going to talk about is Hebi Sasuke post Orochimaru absorbed, 5 Kage Summit Sasuke, which means his feat from his Taka days, plus the 5 Kage Summit, and then EMS Sasuke in the both early and war arc stages, right before he gets EMS, or right before he gets the Rinnegan. And then at the end, we'll talk about how each one of these Sasukes would fare if all of the Akatsuki tried to rush him at once. So just in case anybody does want to hear about that. So we'll start off with Hebi Sasuke versus Hidan and Kakuzu. Now, I will be honest with you. I don't think they stand a chance. Like, because people are, look, if you were to ask me like 3 or 4 years ago, I would say that Kakuzu would give this Sasuke a hard time, especially if Hidan's with him. But, like, my opinions of Kakuzu have kind of changed a little bit here and there. He's still my favorite Akatsuki member, but, like, I don't know. Hebi Sasuke with Orochimaru absorbed would probably be just too much for either of these two, especially even if they are working together.
I think when it comes to like post absorption, some people go back and forth and say, well, maybe after the absorption he gains some actual power and maybe then he'd be stronger, maybe before he's not. But either way, even if you do want to say he gets power or not, I can understand both interpretations, because usually like the third data book and most of the manga would just support the idea of him getting, the white serpent, which kind of just gives him healing abilities and poison resistance and the ability to use oral rebirth and get access to super niche snake abilities that were kind of prone to just Orochimaru at one point. But one thing you also have to consider is, well, he also has to suppress Orochimaru down inside of himself. Maybe he's not stronger. The 10th Mini Chronicles guide does state that he gains power, but maybe you could say that's from, the ability to get those extra sort of abilities to his arsenal. So you can kind of go back and forth, but the one thing I think that needs to be pointed out is that Kakuzu is generally stronger than Hidan, right? Hidan calls him the doer, and in the fight against Kakashi and Ko, they basically say, yeah, the masked guy is the one we got to worry about. And he does give Kakashi, the strongest of their squad, the hardest of the run out of, both him and Hidan. But the thing is, he's defeated by Naruto, who still believes he hasn't caught up to Sasuke prior to absorbing Orochimaru, and that Sasuke kind of perception blitzed that Naruto anyway. And yeah, sure, Naruto was a little fatigued, a bit disheveled, wasn't quite at his peak. But the problem is, maybe it's like a narrative for this Sasuke to be stronger than these lower Akatsuki members, which could be supported by the third data book, which does state that he has the power to even surpass the Akatsuki members and whatnot. So here, by this point, he's kind of on the level of, or even beyond Naruto, who has surpassed Kakashi by this point. And some people might bring up the idea of where after Kakashi kind of contradicts himself and then says, well, you might surpass me. Well, that is a mistranslation. Kakashi does kind of just say he's already surpassed him and kind of just corroborates his previous statements. So I'd say that, like, whatever you think Kakashi is, at least say Sasuke does just as good. And then you can consider how maybe Kakashi wasn't at his best during that fight because he had to keep up and sort of help, and Choji and whatnot, because they were there. They didn't really help him much. He was kind of saving them.
Honestly, like, when it comes to Kakuzu, if you really want to get specific about this, like, well, for one thing, he takes care of Hidan like it's nobody's business. Hidan self-admits he's the slowest member of the Akatsuki, so with Sasuke's speed alone, he should be able to just take his head off. If he was slow enough to get captured by Shikamaru's shadow possession and get his head cut off by Asuma, Sasuke should be able to get it done lickety split. And when it comes to Kakuzu, like, at worst, Sasuke can just copy anything that, Kakuzu puts out, because Kakuzu only has nature affinity. And like, yeah, they're all large scale ninjutsu, but like Sasuke still can just copy anything he does. So at worst, he just cancels out every attack he has until like Sasuke can find an opening. And, you know, at best, he just cooks all the mask, you know, really quickly anyway. I mean, the masks aren't really even that fast. No, the only reason they were giving Kakashi so much trouble was because he was like fighting like 4v1 at the same time. So, I mean, I don't know. It just depends. I mean, and this is something that I brought up to Virtue before we start recording. Look, I know if some people are going back and forth on how Kirin is handled, because in the Sasuke and Itachi fight, like Sasuke had to make a thunderstorm in order to create Kirin. But I've always interpreted the fact was because, you know, it was like the latter part of the fight. He was running low on chakra, so it would definitely help, you know, to, you know, be able to perform the jutsu without using any chakra unnecessarily, or, you know, scrambling to wait to reserve some chakra. But then during the Team 7 scuffle in the Tenchi Bridge arc, Sasuke is like seconds away from dropping Kirin on all of them, you know, without much trouble, it looks like. So if Sasuke, and like, you know, Virtue did, you know, bring it up to me, bring the point like that Kirin may not be as powerful because it's not from the thunderstorm specifically, and that's a good point. But even still, though, it's still Kirin, and you know, whether it's not as powerful or not, like I think it's dropped in any of those Akatsuki Duo. I mean, they're at worst they're gonna be feeling it for a minute, and at best they're completely getting vaporized like it's nothing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If you take into account that Kakuzu was, even in his Diamond Morph, completely stabbed through by Kakashi, despite the fact that he was saying he's virtually invincible against physical attacks, it's pretty clear what Kirin would do. And yeah, in that call that we were talking about just before this, one thing interesting to note is kind of what Lightning Blade just brought up, and is that, yeah, he doesn't have the Amaterasu here, but it probably won't make too much of a difference, because in the third data book it does state that his fire style Art of the Dragon Flame is what he typically would use to light up the sky. And if you go back to the Itachi fight, he tries to catch Itachi off guard by blasting these through the roof, but they kind of just fire up into the sky, and it doesn't even directly get that close to Itachi, kind of just skims him and his cloak. Then he fires another one, despite the fact that Itachi already dodged, which is kind of weird. And then they go into the clouds all the way up that high, supporting the third data book's interpretation. And then a page later, you could see the sky has now changed color. So it's not the fact that the Amaterasu was burning for that entire time. No, it's primarily the fact that whenever these go into the sky then changes to that dark color where he's ready to use Kirin. So it's like maybe Kirin might be slightly weaker, but it's probably not going to be that much weaker, at least to like a large percent or whatever. And I think Kirin's still a really valid win con against both Kakuzu and Hidan.
Yeah, and honestly, that's not even us talking about any of the curse mark stages. Not even curse mark 1, curse mark 2. We're talking like, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm sure they could put pressure on him enough to like maybe put curse mark 1, you know, at best curse mark 2. But either way, Sasuke beats this duo. I don't think we need to talk about too much more. Going on to 5 Kage Summit Sasuke versus the same Immortal duo. I mean, it's honestly gonna be the exact same thing, just worse. I mean, let's be honest. Like, yeah, he loses the curse mark and whatnot, but like, there is a lot of evidence to support the fact that he is stronger now than he was in his curse mark. Obviously, he loses some perks about like the healing and the resistance to poison and whatnot, but like, well, I mean, he does still have immunity to poison, according to Kakashi. So, like, he does lose the healing and whatnot, so that's definitely, you know, but I mean, he doesn't really need it, especially against this duo. Like I said, an Amaterasu is probably going to get the job done on both of them. Like, even with all the hearts and whatnot, like, it might even be easier for Amaterasu to get all the mask off the field, even including his Diamond Morph, than it would be to, you know, try to shoot a Lightning Blade or Chidori Simbone at the Earth Style mask to get rid of it. And again, Kirin. Like, I don't want to sound redundant, but Kirin.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Even then, you could even argue that the weakest Sasuke from the summit is stronger than a CM2 peak Hebi Sasuke. So think about what we said, where we took the very conservative interpretation, saying even if you say he's just around or just above Kakashi level, that's still enough to beat the Immortal duo, to be honest, especially with the aid of Kirin. So then you take it, okay, that, that wasn't really counting much, but then you add on CM2, and then this base 3 Tomoe Sasuke at the beginning of the summit is stated by Karin that Sasuke's chakra, it's changed. She's not even the same Sasuke as before. I can't believe it's thicker than when he's in the curse mark second state, and colder. So that's the problem. Like, even C, he's like, there's one chakra that's erasing many others. I can't believe it's Sasuke's chakra, because it's just changing that much. And both Tobirama and Maguire from the Sakura novel highlight how the emotions and hatred can change the quality of chakra in the eye. And changing a quality of chakra will obviously give you a real boost in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu, as proclaimed by Fukasaku when trying to teach Naruto Sage Mode. And this kind of happens throughout the summit, which is why Sasuke evolves so much. It's because he gets these chakra amps. So even then, it's a 3 Tomoe base Sasuke who's just mowing down the samurai. Even before the Raikage fight is stated to be stronger than that peak Sasuke previously. So now you take this one, and he's like, okay, now he can go into the MS, which is already able to completely outspeed the 4th Raikage whenever he exits the crater in that V1 cloak, whereas previously he was able to run equally alongside that V1 Raikage. So now it's like you add another layer of a big amp on top of that, plus the Susanoo, plus, as Lightning Blade mentioned, the Kirin. It's a pretty nasty matchup. Plus you add Genjutsu stuns, things like this, which we've never really seen on Kakuzu or Hidan. So, yeah.
And that's all without mentioning the Susanoo. We haven't even mentioned the Susanoo all that much, because I don't feel like, Sasuke's going to need it. And it's like not sleeping on Kakuzu's ability, because in all honesty, in all fairness, all the ninjutsu that Kakuzu was putting out were stated to be like high level ninjutsu. So they're nothing to sleep on. But, I mean, at best, at worst, Sasuke just needs to defend with a Susanoo against some of those attacks. But as soon as those attacks get finished, I mean, he can just launch Amaterasu, whatever. He can counterattack quick enough, I feel like. So
yeah. Well, even then, I was gonna say, like, for the ninjutsu point, like, this Sasuke, okay, say he's much stronger now in the summit due to the quality in chakra, which increases the potency of his ninjutsu, which would mean that his fire style is stronger than whenever it was an equal to Itachi's. Because even the 10th Mini Chronicles guide does state that their fire styles were equally matched, which is kind of crazy. Itachi's in the 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guide is stated to be not even comparable to typical fire style and whatnot, and that covers up to chapter 456. So then you take that to mean, like, okay, Sasuke is an equal to that, which would probably be above the fire style that was able to be enhanced by the wind style and overpower Kakashi's water wall at all and whatnot. So even he might have just more potent jutsu generally.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to EMS, and do we really even need to talk about this? I mean, I'm not trying to throw shade on the Immortal Duo, but if it's already arguable that, if it's at worst already arguable that Hebi and Kage Summit Sasuke beats these two, then EMS should have, it's like a walk in the park for him. So, yeah, it's probably just going to take one Susanoo arrow with Amaterasu, maybe not even Amaterasu, and it just gets the job done. So, yeah, so Virtue, unless you guys anything, we can just like
bro, I can't. Not on Kakuzu. That's my boy. I can't say anything on this matchup.
I know. I roughly he's my boy too. All right, so rewind. So now we'll go on to Deidera and Sasori fighting Hebi Sasuke. Now I will say, and Virtue did bring up a good point that a lot of people do tend to overlook when it comes to Deidera, because Deidera is a monster. Y'all, let's not sleep on our boy here. The fact that he was having to fight Sasuke, and like honestly, the 2 out of the 3 opponents he actually ends up fighting. Well, I guess not counting Team Guy, but the 2 out of the 3 opponents he actually ends up fighting in the series have Sharingans. Like they both have, like Sasuke and Kakashi, like both have respective Sharingans. So while he doesn't lose his cool against Kakashi, the fact that he lost his cool against Sasuke because it was an actual Uchiha does tend to affect someone's battle performance. Now, you take Deidera's fight with Gaara, for example. Deidera was putting in work. Not saying he wasn't against Sasuke, but again,
tell him.
Like you look back at it, and Deidera's composure is like he's chilling.
Is night and
like
day.
He got his arm torn off, and he still wasn't even like panicking like all that much. He still was confident he can get the job done. So, if now granted, because it's Sasuke, there's really no like call to think that he won't still respond the same. But with Sasori there instead of Toby, who I was joking, semi-joking to Virtue earlier before we recorded, like Toby was a detriment as to the Deidara's composure, because he was adding to Deidara's frustration just by either just being annoying or just kind of like semi low-key rooting for Sasuke in a way. So it's like with Sasori there, he might lend more composure for Deidara in this fight. He might be the one to like kind of vibe check Deidara, like, hey man, you're getting a little too pissed off, you need to calm down, like you know, eat a Snickers, you know, you're not you when you're fighting in Uchiha, so you need to, you know, calm it down a little bit. And you know, y'all might be thinking that's giving too much credit, but like, you'd be surprised how much composure can affect your battle performance.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Even then, you look at the opening of that fight, Deidara tosses out like 20 C1 bombs just to kind of test Sasuke, because he tries to test him throughout that fight. And literally, Toby's on the ground, squirming around like a dog while these bombs are around him. And Deidara's looking down, he goes, "Gah." And then when he does that, Sasuke takes his back because he's not looking, because he's focused on Toby, because Toby's down there being stupid. So yeah, I completely agree. I think Toby totally hindered Deidara and his ability to battle Sasuke actually that proficiently, compared to how he would, say, against Gaara, where he uses techniques like his speed birds, which are capable of weaving around these Shukaku hand fingers, I guess, or whatever you want to call them. And he doesn't even bring them out against Sasuke. He doesn't use the face attaching birds. He doesn't use his eye goggle or anything like that. He just tries to go to C4 after he gets humiliated by the Sharingan, because he wants to show the new technique that he wanted to kill Itachi with. So it's just straight up ego at that point, why he lost. And sure, C4, it's pretty great. The volume statement says it tips the scales of battle. Yes, it is pretty good. But the problem is, even if you look at how he tries to use it the second time on Sasuke, he traps him with a clay clone, right? And this clay clone in the third data book is stated to be capable of being weaved with explosive clay and chakra. So Deidara literally could have just held him with this clay clone and blew it up. Point blank. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to use C4. So he does that, doesn't put any explosive chakra, then encapsulates him in a C4. And then Sasuke breaks out. But Deidara can still react to that CM2 Sasuke in the air. So I can definitely see those high ends. But yeah, Deidara is way out of character against that Sasuke.
The flip side of all that said, the flip side of all this though is that Sasuke was fighting without killer intent. You know,
yeah,
he even said like verbatim, he's like, I had, you know, jutsu already planned for such, you know, occasions, whatever, but I guess I didn't need to use it. And obviously what he's referring to is Kirin. And, you know, look, I don't want to sound redundant, but if he is able to drop it as quickly as I mean, there's really nothing they could do. I mean, and that's not even getting to the fact that, yeah, we're not really mentioning Sasori, but I brought up to Virtue. Like, first of all, the Hiruko shell is getting broken through without a second thought. Like, that's not going to last more than a minute. And the second thing is that Sasuke, you know, notes that he can see chakra as color. So even if Sasori has his cloak on, you know, and the Uchiha, specifically Sasuke and Itachi, are known to have pretty solid accuracy when it comes to like shuriken and kunais and whatnot. So I could see like Sasuke being able to just launch a few Shitori Simmon in Sasori's heart that he's got in his chest without Sasori even like noticing what he's looking at, or like that he can see it behind his cloak or whatever. This, you know, assuming he doesn't take his cloak off, but maybe I'm giving like, you know, Sasuke too much credit on that, but like,
well, on the point of the Senbon, even then the Chidori Senbon are the only variation of the Chidori that's stated to be faster. So those could even be the fastest variant of the Chidori. And he could just see the core. You know what I mean? So no, I think you're right on point with that analysis.
Well, but even like the little C1 like nanobots that they were throwing out, there was like a ton of them, and he was able to like
hit them all.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah, he was able to hit them all. There wasn't just like a couple of missed or whatever. He was able to hit them all while they were coming at him. So yeah, you know, and then if we're going to talk about Sasori's poison, I mean, he's resistant to poison. Now there is like a big source of contention about Sasori's poison in regards to Sasuke, because there's no definitive proof that like Orochimaru was able to study Sasori's exact poison. But I mean, like Orochimaru was in the Akatsuki. I mean, if he studied for years with the experiences of poison, I would assume like maybe it's an unfair assumption. Maybe it's like being too, you know, but I think there's at least room to speculate that Sasuke would have immunity to Sasori's specific poison. I don't know what you subscribe to, Virtue, about that.
Yeah, I mean, I usually can go back and forth. Like, there's a lot of different like interpretations. Some people might think, well, maybe he did have a really strong poison resistance, but then at one point he lost the white snake, and maybe he lost it, or he still has a bit of potency, but maybe it went down. And I do believe it's in the Sasuke Retsuden novel. There's a statement where like Sakura can't even believe that Sasuke is affected by any poison at all. So I definitely could see the high-ends for both sides. It kind of just goes to a moot point for both parties. Now, yes, you could still make a higher assertion that it might allow for Sasuke to not die or not be paralyzed much by it, and it might just hinder him and act as sort of a fatigue factor maybe. Because like even then, Orochimaru is stated to be in the Akatsuki with Sasori. So you take that and it's like, okay, they probably know about each other's abilities. You know what I mean? Like, Sasori knows about Deidara's bombs, Deidara knows about the poison, whatnot. So, even then, I could definitely see both ends, but I don't think the poison is going to be a silver bullet in killing Sasuke. Or, yeah, it's just not that easy of an assertion to say. Like, it sounds simple, but there is a bit more meat and potatoes to that conversation for sure. So I definitely would say Sasuke should be fine in having to combat the poison, because even then his Sharingan probably can see the poison, because I'd imagine the poison does have a chakra element to it, so it'd almost just be like, you know, Play-Doh on the iron sand. It's gonna be bright, you know what I mean? So he should be able to
best
notice
case for the poison though is like if he hits him with a fog. That's like the best case. Like a poison needle's not catching Sasuke.
Agreed.
He's not gonna be quick enough to get. So not to, you know, ramble too much more. I honestly think Hebi Sasuke takes it, because like, as you know, assuming Deidara is composed, it is tougher for sure. But Sasuke, I feel like this has too much going for him, because like again, while Deidara wasn't composed in their fight, Sasuke also wasn't fighting with killer intent. So there is like restrictions for both sides. So if you were to take away those restrictions, I still feel like Sasuke performs pretty well. And speed is something that we haven't even talked about too much. You know, speed, like Sasuke was almost overwhelming Deidara with his speed alone. So yeah, I gotta give it to Hebi Sasuke on this one too. Again,
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think Sasuke definitely has it, especially if you just take Deidara being in the character like he was against that Sasuke, because even then both of them had sort of disadvantages. Now I would agree that like there's certain elements where, you know, you could say Deidara might win, but I think generally the idea that the third data book remarks about that fight is that Sasuke kind of overcame the long distance versus short distance disadvantages due to the mastery of his Sharingan. So I think you can kind of take a lot of good assertions, and to be honest, I think Deidara is a better stylistic fighter than Sasori. So if you take his performance against Deidara, it'll probably allude to how well he would do against Sasori. So no, I'd agree. I think Hebi Sasuke should probably win.
so now we move on to Kage Summit, and I will be honest, like something I kind of didn't attribute to. Now this is depending on if Deidara is still composed, and if they are able to last long enough. I feel like their best chance is if they are able to stay on the defensive long enough for Sasuke to burn out his eyes. But that's going to be a while. That's going to be easier said than done. But with the benefit for Deidara and Sasori is that they do specialize in long range fighting. For the most part, Sasori's kind of like a mid to long range fighter, but
Yeah.
he can stay at a distance and fight. So, but I mean, all that said, there's really not much. I mean, I guess C3 is still a problem, but I don't know. I feel like Sasuke, like, there's a good argument that Sasuke can just, like, defuse that C3 bomb before he even hits the ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially if he knows that all the clay bombs are able to, you know, because, I mean, just like one Chidori Simbone on each of the nanobots was able to defuse them. Well, I guess, you know, I guess he wasn't as sure at the moment with if Deidara defused them or if the Simbone did. But obviously it's now known that, like, you know, they are Earth style, and if he can just defuse the bomb, lightning style attack, that, you know, big enough, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling, but I feel like even without that, Susanoo arrow should be able to hit it before it hits the ground too.
Full on snipe.
I mean, yeah. So C3 is should be a big of a problem.
Well, if he was able to like I was gonna say, like, Sasuke in character combats bombs via snakes. So like the first bomb that Deidara drops on Sasuke, he combats it by shielding himself with a snake, and he shields himself against obviously the C0. And if he could tank the C0, he could probably tank the C3. You know what I mean? So no, I agree. I agree.
On that note, we haven't even talked about Manda at this point. Like, but I mean, I guess Kage Summit wouldn't have Manda, but still, like, but he does have his hawk though. So
True.
if Deidara chose to take flight, like, that's not going to do much.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And that was honestly what contributed to a lot of frustration on Sasuke's part fighting Deidara, is that, because pretty early in the fight Sasuke lost one wing, so he wasn't able to take flight as good. But with the hawk though, this time around, it's that he could honestly just evade Sasori in general, first of all, and then combat Deidara in the sky, which wouldn't take much longer. So, and that's all, assuming that they wouldn't just get caught with Amaterasu in the first place, or Genjutsu, which the Sasuke's Genjutsu is a lot more potent this time around. And that's another thing too, is each time that Sasuke caught Deidara in the Genjutsu, he did so without killer intent, without any intent of killing him while he was in that Genjutsu. This time around, Sasuke is not going to have any reserves on killing anybody. So, yeah, I know I'm rambling on this, but I honestly think this section is just a little bit worse.
No, I was gonna say I completely agree with you. I think you're definitely on base here, because if you take a look at it, like for Hebi, it's like, yeah, Hebi, I could see it. There's some stylistic problems, but you go to Kage Summit and you're like, okay, he may be massively faster with the MS. Then he gets another amp for his chakra in general in the Skeletal Susanoo. Then he gets a chakra recharge to be even stronger. Then he goes against Danzo and gets an amp to get his V3 I guess humanoid Susanoo that has a Susanoo arrow. And Karin says that Sasuke by this point is almost unrecognizable, and Obito says that his hatred is maturing and this body is just merely adapting to it at this point. So you could say he basically just has this stupidly fast Susanoo arrow sniper that he could use. And you brought up the point of his hawk, and I think that's a really good point, considering he can also shoot a Madarasu off of the hawk and use Enton and things like this. So it does put this match to be a stupidly bad match for Deidara. Sasuke should win this one really easy, to be honest, due to the fact that previously, you hinted at this earlier, that Deidara was struggling with Sasuke's speed combat wise. That's why he takes the fight to the air in the first place, because yes, he can react, but the problem was he kept getting off guarded and he didn't want to chance anything, so he goes straight to the air because he doesn't think Sasuke can do anything. So it's yeah, he's just trying to get an easier fight. Here, Sasuke can go to the air and use that speed to still push Deidara really hard.
I mean, Kisame versus Hebi Sasuke is already arguable, right? Because Kisame is a monster in himself. Then you add on Itachi, who is, we'll say he's sick out of total fairness. This match specifically, we'll use the same Itachi. I mean, he was already overwhelming Sasuke as it was while he wasn't really trying, and this was a Sasuke who was using killer intent. So I guess the best thing I could make for this Sasuke is if he's able to drop Kirin from the start to try to get rid of Kisame. But if he does that, and assuming Kisame does die, which I can give it that, so Itachi's still gonna live, and he still has to fight Itachi with probably a lot less chakra now than he did before he drops Kirin. So yeah, I'm thinking Kisame, one way or the other, Itachi and Kisame take this one. We don't need to discuss this too much more. So 5 Kage Summit. Now, how are you thinking that Sasuke performs in this one?
Yeah, so for 5 Kage Summit, I think this is actually a really fun fight for Itachi. Because most people generally subscribe to maybe this Sasuke actually being stronger than Itachi or way weaker. Nobody's really on the fence, but I am someone who doesn't say Itachi's way stronger than this peak Kage Summit Sasuke, because again, there are a lot of amps that Sasuke gets throughout the summit. The narrative for this arc is the idea that Sasuke is now somebody alongside Naruto who are surpassing the 5 Kage, who are the strongest soldiers in the world, the world at that time. So now the problem is there's numerous comparisons to Itachi throughout this fight for this Sasuke in particular. So I'll give you an example. Like Danzo notices their genjutsu and he's like, "Oh, it's no match for Itachi. It's a night and day difference how much weaker Sasuke's is." Sees comparing their Amaterasus together and things like this. So there's a lot of implications here. Now, what makes this concrete? Because if you just say that, it's like, okay, yeah, but those people, their knowledge isn't that there. Maybe, the Jonin from the flashback in the Kabuto fight remarked that Itachi is the worst criminal in history. So maybe his reputation manages to just float his actual power up, maybe a bit too high. But the problem is Sasuke, upon getting the MS, and Naruto upon learning Sage Mode, because they get them at the exact same time periods, they're both stated on the back of volume 45 to have ever increasing power, which is interesting, as that Naruto is obviously stronger than that Sasuke, stated almost verbatim by Zetsu. But the problem is, that's just because how they evolve. So the Sage Mode instantly gets its power and Naruto has to acclimate afterwards, whereas with the MS, Sasuke has to acclimate to the power as he gets the power progressively, but he doesn't have to acclimate stylistically at the end. So then at the end of the summit, Sage Naruto and MS Sasuke are now equals. They can enter each other's minds like they do at the Final Valley, things like this. This is also consistent, like Hagoromo gives the two 6 paths chakra, but he gives them ways to amplify that chakra. So Naruto, he has a way in Sage Mode, Sasuke has a way in ocular progression. So it kind of keeps this. But here's the thing, is these two, so you say Sasuke is inferior to Itachi. Now Naruto is stated to have, in Sage Mode, is stated to have less power than Pain by the editorial statements. So you say, okay, Pain's stronger than this Naruto, Itachi stronger than this Sasuke, although both matches are close. And then Pain beat up the Sannin mentor and his higher form, which prompted Naruto to get that form in the first place. Itachi did the exact same thing with Orochimaru. So it's like Itachi and Pain here are kind of narrative benchmarks to be slightly above this peak Kage Summit Sasuke, regardless of what you want to say about his Edo feats or whatnot. So anyway, there's a good narrative precedent I just laid out for as to why Itachi is probably superior alone.
Yeah, and that's not even getting into the fact that, like, okay, so this is not a slam on Itachi. This is not a slam on Sasuke's intelligence, but this is Itachi. I mean,
yeah.
The thing is like Itachi with his arsenal is dangerous. And like, even though you can like make some solid comparisons to this Sasuke to Itachi, the fact is that all that said, Itachi still has 2 of the most broken weapons in the series. If you really want to get down to it. So like, worst case, if it even came to a Susanoo battle, like Sasuke's done for, like 100%. So on that alone, it's like, I feel like Itachi, Kisame, and that's not even really, we're not even factoring Kisame in this fight, you know. But like the thing is, like with Kisame, you know, if he tries to use any of those, like, you know, large scale, you know, like water shark missiles or whatever, it could do some serious damage, I suppose, if they're able to hit. But like Sasuke's got fire style to combat it. Worst case, he can use his Susanoo to maybe defend, against the water missile. Obviously, the bigger Susanoo, not just the skeletal one, because depending on how big the water missile is, it's not going. The skeletal one is not going to be enough. But
well, to support that, I was gonna say, like in the Kabuto fight, Sasuke using the ribcage gets caught off guard by the fact that Kabuto's water style can go under the Susanoo, kind of like how the Baku can like use its wind style to get under. So like he can get caught off guard if he's in those lower forms for sure.
Best case I could make for Sasuke in regards to like any of the juice that Kisame has is if he tries to overwhelm Sasuke's mobility and like hinder it by jumping like the giant lake or whatever. Sasuke's got the Hawk to evade that. And that could also work against Itachi too. The Hawk could like definitely provide some decent, evasion. But I mean, if he's gonna try to take the win, I don't think that's gonna do much against, Itachi, So I probably would still give this one to Itachi and Kisame, but I don't know. I don't want to say like mid. I think mid diff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, maybe like 7 out of 10. Maybe 8 out of 10. Itachi and Kisame.
No, I'm completely on the same wave. Because
I don't want to sleep on EMS Sasuke, but
I was just gonna say, like you brought up the idea of a Susanoo battle. I mean, it makes sense for Itachi to still be stronger by this point. Like, for example, Fan Book 2 is a 10-year anniversary release, so it's an addition to the manga, canon to the manga that's released at 10 years of its anniversary, and it's supposed to cover up to chapter 456 because that's the 10-year release date. But it covers a bit more because it covers up to like 463 where like Sasuke Susanoo is. and whatnot, but it shows the skeletal Susanoo in the same panel where he tells Gaara that he's got an even greater absolute defense than Gaara's Sand, because that's what he boasted about. Same with how Neji boasted about his rotation being an absolute defense. But Itachi in the second fan book is stated to have the ultimate absolute defense, and ultimate basically just means best of. So he kind of has the pinnacle of what Sasuke already has there. So yeah.
So I think we can move safely along. We don't mean to digress to the summon Sasuke, but we just want to make sure we get we cross all our T's. But now we're going to EMS. This one is tough. Now if we were to, like, in all fairness, we probably would have to give Itachi like peak, no sickness, because it's tough. Sasuke is no joke, and this is like where like the comparison between Itachi and Sasuke is like really starting to gain traction. Just from the feats alone, genjutsu specifically, like right at the bat, like Sasuke pulls off a feat that is comparable to, if not on, just like straightly on par with Tsukuyomi. So like genjutsu, he's already like comparable at bare minimum to Itachi. His speed, he's able to keep pace with like KCM Naruto, and so like, or KCM 2 Naruto, excuse me. And his Susanoo is no joke. If you want to say that EMS Sasuke has perfect Susanoo or not, if he does have perfect Susanoo, then it's obviously a wipe. But if he doesn't, and if he just uses the one that's like is full body but is not perfect, the one that was fighting against Obito along with Naruto, it still makes the fight tougher. But with the Yadomir and Tsukuyomi Blade, you could like give it to Itachi to like combat EMS Sasuke for a good bit. As much as I love Kisame, I don't, unless Itachi just like straight plays like defense the same way we were talking, that Virtue was mentioning earlier about like how Itachi was defending Sasuke like how he was against Kabuto. If Itachi acts the same way with Kisame, then Kisame could last for a bit longer. But I mean, no hit on Kisame, but I just don't see him lasting too much longer than Itachi in this fight.
I absolutely agree. I think that's definitely a fair interpretation for sure.
So at this one, I mean, all things considered, I say it's still a mid, high. I think it's high diff on Itachi's side, especially if it's healthy or no sickness or whatever. But I think Sasuke does win this one though.
I agree. There's just easier assertions to be made for this Sasuke, whereas for Itachi's side and Kisame's side, you kind of have to extend him, give him a bit more of a generous interpretation, whereas for this Sasuke, you definitely don't have to, and whatnot, especially if we're taking that later Sasuke from those later bouts further on. So yeah, I agree.
All right, so now we'll rewind for the last time and talk about Hebi Sasuke versus Pain and Konan. Now, it's already arguable whether or not like Sasuke can just beat Pain alone in this version, but then you add on Konan, who could at bare minimum just add some defense for Pain, all the paths of Pain. I personally, I think he can perform pretty well, but given all right, given what we were talking about earlier, if Sasuke can launch and drop Kirin in the split second that he could, like he was about to against Team 7 in Tension Bridge Arc, then I think they're cooked. I will say that. I will say, like, bare minimum, the Diva Path still survives. But if he's not, and he has to, if he feels like he has to summon the Rainstorm or whatever to do it, then it does become a little tougher. I just feel like the 6 paths of Pain would probably overwhelm him.
I agree. And I think there's a lot of sentiment to kind of be put towards Pain with the fact of all of his paths. I really do. I've said before, I think Pain gives Hebi Sasuke a really nasty fight. I think he beats him very, very badly. I have a video on this too. So I think Pain, one of his biggest things that are going to give Sasuke trouble is, weirdly enough, the animal path. I think the animal path gives him trouble. Yeah, I know that's kind of
it does,
right? But when you think about it, it does. Yeah, it has, he has the chameleon, which can go completely invisible. He can hide inside it and shoot, Shinra Tenseis from outside of it and things like that. He has the replicating dog, rhino, centipede, ox, bird, things like this. He has so many different summons that he could just totally utilize to overwhelm Sasuke and add a lot of pressure for a lot of things he's gonna have to deal with throughout this fight. And even then, if you're like, okay, well maybe Sasuke's trying to get up close and get into a Kenjutsu clash with Pain, the black belted blades are absolutely broken, and in the manga they're only ever snapped by Sage Naruto and Sage Jiraiya, so 2 Sage mode users. And in the anime they're snapped by Kakashi, but there's already debate if that Pain or Kakashi is stronger than Hebi Sasuke anyway. So even then, that's giving it a pretty generous interpretation. So the black belted blades are probably going to be beating up Sasuke and his Kusanagi blade if he takes that route and decides to refrain from a ninjutsu clash due to the fact that the Preta path can just absorb everything bro's got. So yeah,
so if we're not taking the Kirin thing, into consideration, and I don't mean to sound redundant, it's just that I told Virtue before we start recording that I'm always back and forth on the Kirin part about whether or not how quickly he can just summon it and drop it. If we get away from that and he doesn't use Kirin in that way, then yeah, I honestly think Pain takes it, because otherwise I think Pain does overwhelm him with, like you said, the animal summons, and even the 1v6 on its own is going to be enough to, at bare minimum, give him a nasty fight, like you said. Especially if he has no knowledge going in. That's another thing too, is that a lot of Pain's advantages comes from the fact that a lot of people don't know what the Rinnegan is capable of going in. So if we assume it's going to be like that, now I'm not saying Sasuke won't eventually be able to figure out what Pains do what, or how the fight is happening, but it depends on how far the fight gets by the time he does figure it out. And honestly, I don't think the fight gets that far. I think at best he gets it down to the Diva path, but I think if he does get him down to the Diva path, I mean, I feel like at that point Sasuke's gonna have exhausted a lot of his chakra, if not most, but getting all the rest of the paths, especially if any of the summons are on the field prior. So yeah, maybe if he summons Manda to help, maybe that would be a good feat for him to combat the 6 paths of pain and the animal summons. But I'd probably give this to Pain 7 or 8 out of 10 in my opinion.
Completely agree with that. I think that's a pretty fair take even too, because even then you can give Pain even higher interpretations to say, nah, he might win 9 or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think 7's a pretty good spot for him.
If he can't drop Kirin, if the whole Kirin thing, like I said earlier, it does work the same way, then I think at worst he just gets down Diva path, and I think depending on how much chakra Sasuke has at that point, he could more than likely take the Diva path. But if Kirin doesn't work that way, then yeah, it's like how I said. So 5 Kage Summit. Because it's funny, because we were just talking about Pain only in that fight. We weren't really even talking about Konan. So in this fight, I think Konan should help a little bit more, because like I said before, even though Sasuke loses the healing and whatnot, Sasuke is still more hacked right now, and he's still stronger, still faster. And he has a lot more opportunities to take Pain out easily with Amaterasu. The problem is that if, again, like we said earlier, if Sasuke goes in with no knowledge, first he's going to have to figure out how Pain's abilities work, And while he's doing that, I imagine he's going to exhaust a good amount of his track, especially if he has to resort to using his MS, which against Pain, he's definitely going to have to. Again, like I said earlier, if the Kirin thing doesn't work the same way, then yeah, I think with Pain and Konan, I think they would probably still overwhelm, especially with the summons and whatnot. And now that Sasuke doesn't have Manda, all he's got is the Hawk, which Pain's got a bird of his own. Not to mention, any of the defense that Pain can, use for the paths, and Konan's still there, being able to fly and whatnot. And if Sasuke burns out his Sharingan too much, this is another thing too that a lot of people don't tend to realize, is that when Sasuke burns through his Sharingan, there are a couple of times where Sasuke has to stop for a second because of the pain. And so if that happens again, there's a good chance Pain can capitalize on it in that moment.
I mean, I completely agree. I think even then, Sasuke in the Raikage fight, so even that early on, just by using the ribcage, already is suffering drawbacks from the Susanoo, as whenever he's down getting ready to be hit with the leg drop, he makes the same hack sound that Itachi does when he gets drawbacks from the Susanoo. So if you look at that, it's like he's already facing drawbacks, so the longer the Susanoo has to stay out, and it basically has to stay out the entire time against Pain, to be honest, the worse Sasuke is going to be, and we already know how good Pain's stamina was. Even after bombing the entire Leaf Village and everything, the 10th Mini Chronicles guide says the Diva used all of its chakra using the chaotic Shinra Tensei, which just goes to show why it wasn't in the battle as much as the other paths, and why the Preda and Ashura were helping it out and things like this. Whereas in this fight against Sasuke, that really won't be happening. Pain will be at an absolute peak, and they're kind of just going to be jumping Sasuke like they did to Utakata in the anime and whatnot. So there really is a lot here for Pain, just to say like there's just quite a lot. There's quite a lot of different avenues to really take Pain down, to say, yeah, he should definitely be above this Sasuke. Even if you take this Sasuke and Sage Naruto to be like equals, again, Pain has power surpassing Naruto's in Sage mode. So it's pretty clear he ends up beating Sage Naruto anyway. Like, most people forget this, he beat Sage Naruto. So yeah, I think this match is
Pain beat Sage mode Naruto without killer intent. So that's another thing too.
Agreed.
So,
he literally had to hold back.
So like I said, I feel like I know I'm gonna sound redundant. I know a lot of people are probably gonna give me crap about the whole Kirin thing. It's just like I don't want to sound redundant, and that's why we try to like talk about that in the beginning of the video, because I don't want to sound like Kirin is the ultimate end all be all. But even at its like least refined, as we said earlier, like if he just drops it and is not as powerful as the one he used against Itachi, it's still really powerful. Like, so at best it could like do a lot of like borderline lethal damage to his opponents in enough time to maybe help even the odds after the fact. But if not, yeah, like I can't see again, because again we're just talking about Pain. Like we're not even really discussing Konan on this fight a whole lot, and so like just the Kage Summit Sasuke versus Pain is already debatable, and so yeah, I would agree. I think Pain and Konan at worst overwhelm Sasuke pretty good. So EMS now, this one's actually interesting because okay, obviously a perfect Susanoo clips, right? But if we restrict it, we say he doesn't have the perfect Susanoo here, and it's just like his normal Obito fight Susanoo. It's a bit tougher. I would obviously give it to Sasuke more often than not, because like he just even though it'll take a good amount of chakra, he can just spam his Amaterasu and just get rid of each path. Relative, but aside from maybe the Diva path and the Preda path, but every other path should go down relatively quickly.
No, I agree. You have a Sasuke here who, in the like acclimated form, whenever he's fighting alongside the Hokage to fight Obito, he's able to keep up better in that fight than KCM 1.5 Naruto or MKCM Naruto, whatever you want to say. Because like even then, like whenever Jubito's first coming out and Tobirama uses tandem, they're sliding down the toad head and Naruto's freaking out. He's like, I don't know what's going on. And Sasuke's able to remain calm. Sasuke's able to use the Susanoo hand to cover Naruto and protect him from the bomb placed on Minato's right shoulder. He's able to kind of just aid him. He's like, Naruto, go all out, I'll match you. So it's like he is a superior to Naruto in this fight, and this is a later KCM 1.5 Naruto than the one who was able to react to Madara and Obito's fire style at the same times and their MS projectiles at the same times, whilst also reacting to Renegon Obito's Kamui dodge like from behind the back, because he gets Kakashi's warning where they move like relatively. So even then you could say that like, yeah, this Sasuke, he's kind of a different beast at this point compared to the animals that Pain was fighting with a couple hundred chapters.
And that's not even counting still the Hawk, and now he has Aoda to help at worst. So yeah, I'd imagine like the Susanoo, the Aoda, and the Hawk, if need be, like combined with the Amaterasu shenanigans he's got, the Inferno style flame control, the arrows he's got. Yeah, I don't see Pain or Konan really giving this Sasuke too much of a fight. And that's again not all mentioning the fact that he has Kirin. So yeah, I think so. Now that's not to say that I don't think Pain doesn't give him a decent fight in his own right, but I think Sasuke takes this one like eight out of 10 times, maybe 9. I could probably need 9.5 out of 10 if you really wanted to get down to it.
Yeah.
So all right. So now we're at the end of the video where we'll talk about each one of these Sasuke's versus all of them at once. I'm sure someone will say something about it if we don't cover it. Hebi Sasuke is not even a conversation. Like we don't even need to talk about that. Best case he gets the immortal duo, but honestly I think, or actually with Kakuzu and all that, like I honestly think the best case he gets Hidan and Konan, because I don't think, you imagine, because like that's the thing, a lot of people just don't understand. Like you gotta think, like the 4 hearts of Kakuzu, the 100 puppets of Sasori, 6 paths of pain, and then you have the rest of them. And it's like that already. That's gonna be enough to freaking overwhelm somebody. So yeah, Hebi Sasuke loses. Kage Summit Sasuke also loses. That's not even at best he lasts like 5 minutes at best, and that's even still being generous.
Yeah.
EMS Sasuke is an actual really good case, I feel like. Now this is depending on if you give him the perfect Susanoo, like we said. Perfect Susanoo, he should clip everybody. I mean, perfect Susanoo was taking care of planetoids like it was nothing. But if he only has the Susanoo that was fighting against Obito, because let's be honest, he's gonna need that Susanoo. I don't see, like, you know, Sasuke on the ground being able to last too long against the whole Akatsuki. Like he's gonna have to, I don't know, like, because I don't want to sleep on this Sasuke, right? But this is the entire Akatsuki rushing you at once, and I know there's a lot of people who are gonna make a good comparisons to EMS Sasuke to, Madara, right? Because everyone was like, oh, you're gonna be a shinobi that surpasses Madara one day, and everyone is mostly in agreement that Madara, in certain versions of Madara solo the entire Akatsuki even all at once. So there are people who was like, okay, if Madara should be able to solo the Akatsuki, then EMS Sasuke should be able to do the same. And I'm not like necessarily saying that you're not, you don't got something going on there, but this like is Sasuke who, I mean, he did kind of get clipped by a blind, although using Sage mode, Madara, relatively quickly. So, and that was also with Madara who had Limbo too. So, like, I don't know. I feel like at best, I think this EMS Sasuke takes a couple of the duos out, namely like Hidan, Kakuzu, and Deidera and Sasori still. But I think that the combination of, Itachi, Kisame, Pain, and Konan might be able to overwhelm him.
I mean, it's like, I definitely see, like, because there's really no way to define the answer to this, because it's like, okay, it's quality versus quantity. Sasuke is stronger massively than any of them individually, but there's 10 of them, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of guys here he has to deal with, so I could definitely see both sides. I might lean towards, like, he could probably beat them all if he uses his, like, Susanoo that has legs and the BSM, like, combo attacks and whatnot, because even then you could say he has the perfect Susanoo, he might have just not used it or whatever, and you can go back and forth on this. I personally say he has it in that fight, except because he has the same one that matches, like, EMS Madara's whenever he covers the Nine Tails or whatnot, and you could just say that, like, Sasuke here didn't want to fully evolve it to the massive one that looks more humanoid, because that would just mean that Obito would fly around even farther, which would mean that their projectile attacks, such as the Susanoo arrow and Biju bomb, would then also have to travel further and probably be less accurate with a smaller chance of hitting. So maybe he's just trying to compact it down at this point. So I would say that he probably could win, but it's definitely not going to be a super easy fight for him, all things considered, just to be honest, just because, like, a lot of the characters have a lot of abilities that are hard to deal with by nature, like Itachi, Susanoo, things like this. Some have to be dealt with through just stamina battles and things like that, and whatnot. So,
now I will say, in this case, I feel like the benefit for Sasuke is that a lot of the large scale attacks from the Akatsuki can't be used safely around each other, because that would just kill them. That'll kill the rest of them. Like Sasori's poison, Deidera's a lot of Deidera's bombs, Pain's even if you want to restrict Pain's Almighty Push, that's still like, you know, even with the minimal Almighty Push would still at least injure some of the surrounding Akatsuki members. So like there is a good, you know, as far as restrictions go, there is a good case for that, for Sasuke to be able to pull it off. I think with just sheer numbers, and like I said, sheer numbers and the quality of some of these jutsu that they were able to pull off, I think the Akatsuki would overwhelm EMS Sasuke, but not easy. I think they take it like 8 to 10 out of 10, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
But there y'all have it, though. That's an hour of a video for y'all. There you go. We discussed every
Big old
meaningful
movie.
Sasuke. Yeah. Thank you, Virtue, for being on the channel with me.
Thank you for having me.
Feel free to, like, you know, harp on me about the whole Kirin. I know that's good. Like, even right now, I'm thinking like maybe I was giving the Kirin section too much, you know, credit. But keep in mind, that's why I was saying, like, if you can do it, if you can't, you know, this happens and this happens. So, but yeah, thank you all for watching all the way to the end. If you have, you're a champion.